Types of food chain. There are two types of food chain. One is grazing food chain, another one is detritus or saprophytic food chain. In grazing food chain, there are two types. One is predator food chain, another one is parasitic food chain. Grazing food chain. Grazing food chain is a type of food chain in which the energy at the lowest trophic level is acquired via the photosynthesis. The grazing food chain begins with the producers like green plants, which creates its own food through the process of photosynthesis, and later on move to the herbivorous and to the carnivorous. So in grazing food chain, the energy is acquired from the sun. What are the implications of grazing food chain? In grazing food chain, the type of food chain is directly dependent upon the flow of radiant energy or the solar energy. Therefore, the gross production of plants might meet the following consequences. That is, they may be oxidized during respiration, they can be eaten by herbivores, or they may die and decay. Sunlight energy serves as a primary source of energy in the grazing food chain. The grazing food chain always adds energy to the ecosystem and fixation of inorganic nutrients, and also it involves every macroscopic organism. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the grazing food chain, how the autotrophs utilizes the solar energy in the preparation of the food, and you can see the showing the inputs and losses of energy at each trophic level, the first, the second, third and the fourth trophic level, and A represents the assimilation of food by the organism at the trophic level. A represents the assimilation of the food, that is A2, A3, and A4 represents the assimilation of the food by the organism at each trophic level, and F1, F2, F3 and represents F represents the energy lost in the form of fecuses and the excretory product, and C represents the energy lost through decay, and R represents the energy lost to the by respiration. So the food chain starts from the living green plants and goes on to the grazing herbivorous. You can see it starts from the autotrophs, that is the green plants, and it moves to the herbivorous, that is herbivorous, grazing herbivorous, and on to the carnivorous, and on to the carnivorous, the primary carnivorous and the secondary carnivorous. So in ecosystem with such a type of food chain are directly depend upon the influx of solar radiation, and this type of food chain depends upon the autotrophic energy which capture and they move to the energy to the herbivorous, and most of the ecosystem in nature follow this type of food chain, and this chain is very significant from the energy standpoint. And as I told you, there are two types of grazing food chain. One is the predator food chain and the parasitic food chain. So in predator food chain, as the name itself indicates, here one animal consumes another animal for the sustainment of life, and the animal that is being eaten, it is known as prey, and the animal that is eaten by the prey is known as predator. In case of parasitic food chain, the plants and the animals in the grazing food chain are infected by the parasites, and this is what is called as parasitic food chain. And example for the grazing food chain, as I told you, it depends upon the energy captured by the autotrophic plants, and flow is captured through the energy to the herbivorous. If you just look into the aquatic level, the phytoplanktons plays a important role in the manufacture of the food, and this is eaten by the zooplanktons, and these zooplanktons are eaten by the fishes, and the small fishes are eaten by the large fishes, which occupies a different trophic level in the ecosystem. When you come to the grassland ecosystem, the grasses are eaten by the rabbits, and then the rabbit is eaten by the fox. So these are the different types of food chain, and the small plants or the grasses is eaten by the deer, and the deer is eaten by the lion in case of terrestrial ecosystem. And you can see this picture showing grazing food chain in the terrestrial habitat and grazing food chain in the aquatic habitat, where the plants acts as primary producers in terrestrial ecosystem, and the primary consumers is the plant eating animal. Example, it is given as caterpillar, and this caterpillar is eaten by the larger animal, that is the lizard, which occupies the secondary consumer, and this lizard is eaten by the tertiary consumers. Example noted is given as snake. And in case of aquatic grazing food chain, you can see the phytoplankton acts as an autotrophs in manufacturing the food, and this phytoplankton is consumed by the smaller animal, that is called as the zooplanktons, and this zooplankton is eaten by the heterotrophs, that is the fish, and this fish is eaten by the pelican. So this example you can give for grazing food chain, either it is in terrestrial or in the aquatic food chain, aquatic form. So this represents the grazing food chain, where autotrophs are eaten by the herbivorous, which acts as the primary herbivorous, and herbivorous are eaten by the primary carnivorous, and primary carnivore is eaten by secondary carnivore, and secondary carnivore is eaten by the tertiary carnivore, and when they die it is decomposed by the decomposers, etc. This figure shows the picture of grazing food chain. As I told you in the previous slide, the aquatic ecosystem, which acts as autotrophs, which acts as carnivores, and the grassland ecosystem, rabbit, fox, wolf, and tiger, which represents in different trophic level. Grasses are eaten by rabbit, rabbit is eaten by fox, and fox is eaten by wolf, wolf is eaten by tiger, which occupies the first trophic, second, the third trophic level, and the fourth trophic level. That is the autotrophs, the herbivores, then the primary carnivores, secondary carnivores, and tertiary carnivores. And when you come to the grassland ecosystem, the grasses occupies the autotrophs, then it is eaten by grasshopper, the herbivore, then the herbivore is eaten by the primary carnivores, which is a frog, and frog is eaten by snake, the secondary carnivores, and the snake is eaten by hawk, the tertiary carnivores. So this is you can give an example for for grazing food chain, either it is an aquatic, either it is a grassland, either it is a terrestrial food chain in terrestrial ecosystem. And when you come to the parasitic food chain, so in this type of food chain, either the producers or the consumers is parasitized. Either it is a producer, or either it is a primary consumer, secondary or tertiary consumer is parasitized, so that the food passes to the smaller organisms. So the energy transfer of this kind of food chain, it is not so significant. So when it is producers eaten by the herbivores, and this herbivores is eaten by the parasite, and this parasite is eaten by the hyperparasite. For example, for this parasitic food chain is the trees, which is an autotroph, and this fruit eating birds, and the lice in the bugs, which is a parasite, and hyperparasite is bacteria and fungus. So this is a type of food chain. And in the next session, I will be dealing with another type of food chain, that is called as a saprophytic or detritus food chain.